and welcome all the participants for this lecture. We can start now, and today, first let me figure out, okay, it's all right. So we can start now, sir.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry, I think I joined yesterday's link, as you said.
Okay, yeah.
Right. All right. I'm so sorry. Okay. Let me see if I can present it. Is that visible? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right. Now today I'm going to talk on, very briefly, of course, an alternative poetics of viewing, where I'll be looking at one of the finest scholars that you have within comparative literature as well as within Marathi. Right? And he, somewhere in the 80s, he introduced a way of inquiry, all right? A manner of inquiry. And within that manner of inquiry, Bhalachandra Nemade was trying to provincialize discourses within not just in English, but mostly because remember he's also basically a professor of English. Yeah, so he was trying to somewhere decenter the existing discourses that had come in. And if you remember my talk of the last 2 days, specifically with this idea of the Renaissance, the questioning of the Renaissance, the acceptance of the Renaissance, because it's not that everybody would accept it or everybody would negate it. It depends on location, it depends on people as to how they accept or they negate discourses. So Bhalachandra Nemade wanted to bring in a system of viewing or relocating the locus, right? Now, I mean, we have. I mean, he was trying to decenter the book, not in a Derridian sense, right? But he was trying to decenter the entire politics as well as the poetics of viewing. At the same time, he was trying to bring back a certain focus that was extremely necessary within the discipline of English, right? And he called it Deshivaad or Deshiada or Deshivaad. Vaad would mean discourse, and Deshi is something that points to an older tradition within India. So we have the Margi and the Deshi, right? So the Margi as your mainstream tradition, and Deshi as it's always been seen as a lesser tradition, but that's what Nemade will be arguing against. Right? He'll be looking at the nature of morality because Deshivaad or Deshiata or Deshi against the idea of the Margi was seen within that sphere of morality. Right? I'll come to this. For this, we need to get into this idea of Bhasha literatures. Now, what do we mean by Bhashas? Or how do we understand? Because we've been talking about nation states for the last couple of days, and we're looking at the idea of certain signifiers which constitute national identities and nation state identities in terms of symbolic structures. Yes, so you have linguistic symbolism, you have totemic symbolism, a number of ideas that come in when you look at the construction in terms of identity of nation states. I'd also told you yesterday that a what we understand as the nation state largely is a part of a Westphalian peace, and a part of that Westphalian peace, which let me tell you, was extremely feudal when it began, but then he gradually grew with the late Enlightenment to this idea of what we understand as the sovereignty of nation states. Yeah, but if you look at much of Europe, that's where it all began in terms of the development of nation states. You will find, I won't use the term single language, right? But let us say you have a single language identity. It's not possible for any nation state to have a single language, right? That includes Europe, because you always have buffer zones where you have multilingualism operating. Yeah, but let us say official, most, let's say 90% of the people will be speaking versions of a single language. Let me use the term versions of a single language, right? In the sense you don't have, for example, if I talk about English, it's not a standard idea, right? So the Scottish have a different way of looking at it. The Welsh have a different way of looking at it. The same way French, right? French will be spoken in a different way in terms of dialectical Frenches across France. So, but still, remember, it's still a singular unitary language, isn't it? You have versions of it, right? Like you have Hindi, you have Avdi, you have Rajbhasha, you have Hariboli, you have Bhojpuri, different versions. So India did not fit or does not fit into this category. That was a huge problem, specifically when you're looking at this idea of constituting the idea of a national language, right? Or what should be the Rajbhasha. I mean, there are huge debates on this that happened in the Constituent Assembly. Before the adoption of the Constitution, you had the Constituent Assembly, and you have the Constituent Assembly debates on how uh, your official language of the nation has to come, what needs to come, and it was a problem. It was a problem because it's not India is not an easy place where languages are concerned, right? I'll be coming to that later because if you look at the next slide, if I look at Grierson, we're talking about 733 languages Grierson had brought out, who was in the part of that linguistic survey of India, uh, in colonial India. Yeah, so Grierson's survey was the first major survey that happened on Indian languages, and they discovered 733 languages. And we're not even talking about orality, oral languages. We're not even talking about that. Okay. So we're talking about languages. So this idea of bhasha, like how many bhashas are there within India? How do you constitute uh, the idea of an official language? How would you administer states? How would you, for example, there was a linguistic bifurcation of India in terms of states. So you had Gujarat is a very, very late development, 1960, 1966, I believe. You had the Maha-Gujarat Andolan. I might be wrong with the date, right? You had the Maha-Gujarat Andolan, right? It was a part of Bombay state. Massive concentration of Marathi is where Maharashtra is. Massive concentration of Kannada speakers is where Karnataka is. A massive concentration of Tamilians, or the Tamil language speakers, be where the Tamilians are, and the Hindi speakers are across the north of the Narmada, in a way, let us say. I'm talking about native Hindi speakers, right? Many people speak Hindi, right? So this idea of bhasha is something that we need to understand because on one hand, you had colonial education coming in, right? So a very interesting book that you should read on this idea of language would be by Gauri Vishwanathan. It's a very early book, but still the best book in that area. It's called The Masks of Conquest. See if you can look it up. or if you don't have it, I'll send you an ebook. The Masks of Conquest is where she looks at the politics and the policies of how English was introduced. Uh, the infamous, famous, however you want to look at it, the 1835 minute of Macaulay, and so on and so forth. So that's where language is instituted. English as a language is instituted, and English education comes in. I talked about this yesterday. But how do we look at the local bhashas? Because what happens to the status of those bhashas? What is the nature of literary activity in those bhashas? What is the literary historiography of these bhashas? Right? Does it die out with the advent of colonialism? It's a major question. Right? And what is the future of the bhashas? I mean, these are major points that we need to look at and debate on, let us say, because we cannot doubt the historiography, the literary historiography when we talk about languages, right? I mean, Gujarati, I live in Gujarat. So Gujarati as a language is first formalized in the 10th century by uh, Hemchand Acharya, right? He developed, and Gujarati is still a Prakrit at that time. It's not even your modern Gujarati, right? So a lot of the Jain sources of that period would be written in this early Gujarati Prakrit. Marathi would be written in the Modi script, but it's a very early Proto-Marathi that's happening. And it begins in the 10th century. So if I talk about a literary historiography of Gujarati, it stretches back to the 10th century. And this is true of most bhashas in India, right? Kannada has nearly 1200 years. Telugu has close to the same, 12 to 1300 years. Malayalam, because of Mani Pravadam, is slightly younger, but it's not very young. Right? Tamil, as a language, is it dates back to Gupta Brahmi, that particular period, nearly 2500 years, unbroken, uh, unbroken historically in terms of literary production, right from the third Sangam period. Yeah, Maithili has it, massive historical. Ahomya has it. Yes. Hindi, thanks to Ramchandra Shukla, it moved backwards. But now you have a literary historiography to Hindi too. So Hindi is a very modern idea. So you have a literary historiography with the Indian Bhasha traditions, right? Which, which let me tell you, is absolutely centered within the language departments. So, I mean, let's say a Hindi department would look at the Hindi production. Same thing happens with other bhashas. But we do not have a give and take between, say, Hindi and Gujarati, or Gujarati and Tamil, or Tamil, say, Hindi. We do not have a give and take in the sense there is some kind of a hermeneutic sealing that's happening within the bhashas. And the larger problem, what Nemade argues, is that that the bhashas have always been seen as a lesser tradition in India because the elite tradition is English. It has to be English literature. It has to be the English novel. It has to be the English poetry, right? So, and then that has created a kind of a divide that's happening between bhashas and the location of English, the location of the bhashas, and the location of English. When I say location, I'm going to be very, very clear on this. It's just not just the production of a certain form of writing that's coming from an area, but Nemade will go a bit ahead when he will say it is the area that engenders the kind of literature that's happening, right? So if I say uh, Bhojpuri literature, yeah, Bhojpuri Sahitya, then it has to be something situated within the nature of the land of Bihar and what we understand as Purvanchal of UP, right? There's something within that land that's engendering that language. So it's not people building the language, remember. With Nemade, the idea of location is very, very crucial. It's the land which engenders language. All right, we'll come to this later. Come to the Grierson survey. You had something called the Linguistic Survey of India, all right? Uh, it was carried out between 1894 and 1928, and this is right during the heyday of the British Raj, remember? And the survey was carried out by George A. Grierson for the Indian Civil Service. Fine. It has for a very long time been the central source for language research, specifically for people within linguistics. They would like to they would refer to this a lot, mainly because a lot of these languages within the Grierson survey don't exist today. Many of them, all right? So what it discovered was 733 languages and dialects. But in terms of methodology, what Grierson had done is he had hired a lot of school teachers for his data collection. And remember, it's still 1920s, between 1894, late 19th century, early 20th century. Locomotion is a problem, transportation is a problem, accessing places is a problem. So there's going to be methodological problems. And this is also a very colonial methodology that was being used in terms of linguistics. So it creates a bigger problem today. I mean, so linguistics today, even though the source is so valuable, we do look at these sources not as completely sacrosanct. We would like to update it at times. And this was done. And this was done by the People's Linguistic Survey of India. Right? So the People's Linguistic Survey of India, which was basically a volunteer effort across India, it actually documented over 780 Indian languages, right? Still existing, still spoken. And not all of them have a script. Please remember that. That's very, very important because when we constitute the idea of language, we need the idea of the script also. All right. So it had a huge number of tribal languages, nomadic languages, as well as certain languages which show a bit of hybridity at the coastal areas. So what? This is one of the latest. I mean, it's not an official idea. It's more in terms of it involves scholars across India, but we can't call it an official survey of India, all right? But it's the latest that we have, whatever we have. So what they discovered was Arunachal Pradesh has the most of the languages. Bengal has the highest number of scripts, right? And it also recorded that the number of speakers of languages like Bhojpuri and Khasi would be in Meghalaya, right? There you have uh, a significantly higher number of speakers. Now, why that would happen is very, very interesting. Either uh, people are finding the languages again, or there's a better intervention within schools, right? Or there's a certain awareness that you need to keep the language. At times, because you have something called the age schedule of languages in India, in the Indian Constitution, which recognizes 23, if I remember if the number is okay, 23 Indian languages. So any number of languages would like to enter the age schedule. All right. So you suddenly have a heightened activity that's happening around the language to bring it to that level where it can be included into the age schedule of Indian languages. All right. Okay. Yes. It also documented a lot of extinct languages and around 50 languages since Grierson's survey have gone extinct in India. All right. And a number of languages which are in endangerment. So today, for example, there's a heightened awareness about this in terms of endangered languages, and you're having new departments that are coming up across India in Indian universities, where we are trying to bring about the Department of Endangered Languages. We're trying to preserve the script. Where you don't have a script, with diacritical intervention, using an existing script, we're trying to bring about a script. And this was something that we had tried to do when I was in my earlier university. For example, I was in the Kutch University. Uh, that's on the border, right? The Indo-Pak border, at a place called Bhuj. Now, Kutchi is a very important bhasha. It has a long spoken history, an oral history, but it does not have a script. All right. So we had made an attempt to use Gujarati, the existing Gujarati script, with diacritical notations to try and build a script for Kutchi. All right. I mean, it's a long process. It's not something that can be done in 6 months or 1 year or something. It's a long process to build a script for a language, and that script has to be acceptable to the people. It has to be taught at the school level. It's a huge process. So when you construct a script for a language, it might take you nearly 50 years before the script actually comes out. 3 or 4 generations need to live in that script before it works. But the process is on. But what it did discover, the PLSI was 780 languages in India. Now coming to one moment, please. Yes. Now coming back to my earlier slide. Now this brings us back to the idea of the bhashas. For example, the, the biggest charge that has come in within Deshivaad, it would also be it's also been termed as a decolonizing exercise. A number of terms have been used on it. I mean, a long time back, early years of my career, I attended a seminar at a university. I won't name the university or the seminar, but let us say it was a seminar to do with Indian responses. Now, this began somewhere in the 80s, where there was a heightened awareness that you needed to bring in an Indian response to uh, to the existing forms of discourses that were happening within the English departments. Let me tell you, the anxiety of this is more with the English departments. It's less with the Bhasha departments. Let me tell you this, right? So when Bhalachandra Nemade is writing, he's writing not only just to keep because the Bhashas are already aware of it. They're already aware of the importance of their language. Yes, but it's the English departments which, in a very elitist way, have kept Bhashas out, or their study of late, of course, translations have come in, translation studies have come in a big way. But in the 80s, when Bhalachandra Nemade was writing, there was a crisis. So anybody who get into Bhasha literatures or Bhasha sahityas at that time was not seen in a very elitist way. Because English had to be hardcore American literature or it had to be British literature. All right? Single language nationalist literatures, in a way. Even this idea of comparative literature in the 1980s was not seen as a mainstream idea. Okay, ideas like Commonwealth literature was not seen as a mainstream idea. Commonwealth literature is given way to new literatures today. All right, but 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 in the 80s, it was very crucial to bring about a change. People felt that you needed to get out of the frames of the West, term it as a post-colonial condition if you want to, term it as a way of decolonizing yourself if you want to. I mean, these are terms. Any number of terms can be kept from this condition, but there was an attempt. And I remember the plenary in that seminar I had attended, and this gentleman had looked at the Shakuntalam as an epic and a good paper and a very good plenary address. But what he said at the end of it was striking. I still remember it. He said, what we did in the last hour has never been done within the discipline. right? I mean, it was such a serious undertaking to get into this idea of decolonization. But does Nemade want to decolonize? Because people have misunderstood Deshivaad actually. It's understood as it was seen as something reactionary. It was seen as something. It was bracketed within fundamentalism also. All right. So, what is this discourse? I'll come to why is Deshivaad misunderstood later in my talk. But let us understand what is Nemade saying. When Nemade mentions Deshivaad, he's talking about the idea of native cultures, linguistic cultures, and the literary historiography of the Bhasha. All right? He would like to emphasize this over globalized Western influences. Okay, probably if you remember the three phases of Aurobindo I talked about yesterday, he had mentioned that the first phase is the imitative phase, the second phase is where you have a reaction, and third phase is where you have a happy synthesis. Right? But this was the time when Deshivago was working or is working. You had this idea that you needed to get out of a very imitative form of writing, specifically because you had a major awareness of the Indian novel in English, or a major awareness or a major look at the Indian writing in English somewhere in the 80s. I mean, you had people like Salman Rushdie writing, you had people like V.S. Naipaul writing, and Nemade in his book is going to critique Rushdie and Naipaul in a big way. In the sense they don't represent what Nemade talked about was the basic idea of the land. All right? I mean, how true Nemade is or how problematic Rushdie was, we leave that particular problem. But but what he does is he's going to privilege Bhashas over what you understand as influences. Remember, he is not negating Western literature. And this is where the mistake is made. The basic mistake is Deshivaad was seen as a reactionary idea, but it was not a reactionary idea. Nemade was trying for a synthesis where the idea of the Deshi could coexist with the idea of Western influences. Right? Are you all getting this? All of you? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right. So what he advocates is a literature that is rooted within the idea of the indigenous traditions, the idea of basic. All right. I mean, have a look at. I mean, our Indo-Pak border is tense right now. Have a look at Poetics by Sadat Hassan Manpur. Makes a lot of sense, but he wrote it in Punjabi. The English translation will not give you that idea of Punjabi at all, but you get an idea. He was absolutely rooted within the land. The same way, as I said, Indian Bhashas have a long literary historical centuries of literary development and the poetics that goes into it. It has it. Now, if that is not seen as something that needs to be privileged, then you have a problem in terms of how are you going to question your colonial past. So what Nemade does is he's going to recenter the entire idea of your colonial period, something like what Aurobindo did earlier, right? But in a literary way. And he's trying to bring about an awareness of the nation. He's trying to bring it, he's bringing it back into focus. In the sense that we need to think, Nemade says, in terms of the nation. All right? And he's doing this also, he's also doing this, remember, because it was in the 80s that you had a massive entry of post-structuralism into India. So when you say post-structuralist discourses, when you take French post-structuralism that happened with Foucault, happened with Derrida, happened with Jacques Lacan, you're talking about the entire range of post-colonial theory that came in. The location was different. People were talking about it in terms of the idea of color and so on and so forth. Afro-American writing, black writing was was massively in. African literature had come in around the 80s. So you had this huge, how should I put it? A huge, I would say, let's say there was a huge awareness of what is today understood as world literatures that was happening in the 80s. Right? So American literature came up in a big way. Uh, Post-structuralism came in a big way, as well as African literature and Canadian literature came in a big way. All departments began teaching this. As I said, the anxiety is more with the English departments, less with the Bhasha departments. All English departments began teaching this. Comparative literature departments began teaching this. And at the cost of the indigenous literary production. So very few, let's say, students, even today, would be reading Punjabi Sahitya in Punjabi or in translation. Very few will be reading Bangla Sahitya. Very few will be reading Tamil. They're just not exposed to the bhashas. But they would know they're African. They would know they're Caribbean. They would know they're Australian. They would know they're American. But at the cost of the bhashas. This is where Nemade has a conceptual problem with what is happening. And that's where he introduces Deshivaad. Say uh, we need to understand the bhashas. We need to encourage the bhasha sahityas. At the same time, we are not negating what's coming from the West. We are not supposed to do that. So when Nemade talks about Deshivaad, he's talking about that native soil. He's talking about that language. And he's talking, and probably the most important idea, the idea of lived experience. Right? The idea of lived experience. So that's very, very crucial because literature has to be organic. Right? So what you understand as great literatures, or what you understand as classics in literature, one of the central elements within the definition of a classic would be the idea of the lived experience. Right? So why is Iliad a classic? Why would the Ramayana be a classic? Right? If I put it within these terms, it's classic only because it reflects the reality, the ground reality. The moment you get away from it, let me tell you, I'm a big fan of Rushdie. All right, enjoy reading it. But at the same time, Nemade is absolutely correct. Because what he is doing is, it's not lived experience at all. Magic realism can never be a lived experience. It can only be a psychological state. Something what Gabriel Marquez did it with 100 Years of Solitude. It can only be a psychological way of looking at the play of history. But it's not lived experience. Yes, but say Chamal Nahal's novel would be absolutely lived. Tamas is a great novel, absolutely a lived experience. Yes. So what Nemade is talking about is this blind imitation of literary models you need to move away from. For example, there was never a novel form in India. The novel is a colonial import. We never had the novel. We had poetry, we had kavya. right? So we had the Mahakavyas, we had Prasastis, but never the novel, right? So Nemade is going to privilege the novel. You know, somewhere he's very close to Bakhtin there, Mikhail Bakhtin, where Bakhtin is also going to privilege the novel form. Yeah, and the novel form is privileged mainly because there are possibilities within that novel, the form itself. It can be an experimental novel. You know, Vikram Seth had a novel in verse. Yes, you have the magic realist novel. You have the realist novel. I mean, in French literature, you have Gustave Flaubert. And Flaubert is writing the realist novel. Yes, so you have these models, but he says don't blindly follow it. Like let's say if somebody wants to write a novel today, he's going to pick up a form that's readily available. No, that would be inorganic for Nemade. Nemade would say, if you want to write a novel, write it with your sensibility, your and keep some realism with it. So if you look at his novel, he has won the Gyanpith Award actually. If you read his novels like the Khosla, uh, it's been translated. Khosla has been translated. You read Khosla, you will understand the you might not understand it in English, right? You need to read it in Marathi actually. But let's say you will understand the dialectical Marathi that's coming in. It's everyday Marathi that it's using. It's not your classical Marathi, right? It's not your literary Marathi. It's not the Marathi that's heard in Marathi news. It's your roadside Marathi that Nemade is using. It's absolutely indigenous and Deshi, right? Now, this is where he says you need to get into, where to discover your own sense of identity. Right? It cannot be reactionary, he says. Nemade is very clear on this. If people are understanding Deshivaad in a different way, good for them. But Nemade is very clear in this. Deshivaad is not a reactionary idea. Deshivaad is a participatory idea. And what he says is you need to recognize the bhashas and the bhasha traditions. At the same time, you need to understand the importance of the same traditions across the borders also. Right? You need to keep them together. They're not never in a clash, but they will learn to live with each other. That's Nemade's concern. So as I said, 80s it came out. It came out when, let's say, the Indian post-colonial literary discourse was at its height, or it had just begun. I think it should have just begun. Yes, and Indian culture, Indian writing was often seen as low value. People would not purchase it. People still don't read it. Sahitya Academy still publishes Indian writing in English in translation every year. I'm not too sure how many people even purchase Indian writing, right? But Nepali is looking within Marathi. Obviously, he's not looking at all the Indian languages, but the condition of what Nemade is talking is very, very similar. But when he looks at Marathi Sahitya, he says there's a massive disconnect that he understands from its own sources, from its own roots, right? So he wants to go back. He wants to go back to the earlier tradition. So he looks at the retellings of the Mahabharata. He looks at the Varkari sect, the Bhakti sect that came out in the 12th century, 12th, late 12th century, early 13th century, with Chakradhar, yeah, a major figure within the Varkari cult that came. They actually worship uh, Kandoba, a form of Vishnu in Maharashtra. So there's a lot of Bhakti Sahitya that's happening. He says he wants to get back to Bhakti because Bhakti is is an organic idea because it has no other influences, right? It is absolutely rooted within the soil. That's why the Bhakti movement is so very important. But where and of course Deshivaad, Nemade has been critiqued also because as I said, American literature was a massive entry into India in the 80s, and that was a period where there was also this massive look within America at the Native American traditions. Yeah, remember what you understand as America is built on the funeral pyres of the Native Americans. They destroyed that culture. They kept the Native Americans into reservations. A lot of their writing is just now coming out. It's taken 30, 40 years for them to recover that particular traditions. But there was an attempt to, and it's good of America to do that. There was an attempt to go back and to reprioritize a culture that existed before the Pilgrim Fathers came. Yes, before the colonization of America. So what Nemade does is this American nativism that was prevalent in the mid 70s, early 80s, continued to the 90s, and then it ended in a big way. He brings it back into India, and because American literature was already a major literature that was being taught in the English departments of India, so it was very simple to bring in American nativism, and he's going to modify this idea of nativism as Deshivaad. This is one of the critiques against Nemade. Right? One of the critiques against Nemade was you have used a Western discourse to construct an Indian discourse. It's one of the critiques. Nemade does not deny it, uh, nor does he agree with it, I suppose. But we need to understand there's always these cross-cultural influences that build up discourses in cultures. And at that particular moment, for the want of a name or for the want of an idea, because nobody was looking at it, and you were suddenly aware that the world is going back to its original writings. They try to introduce it, right? And a large impetus to the idea of Deshivaad, remember, was your post-colonial discourse that was building up in a big way in the 80s and 90s in India. Yes, am I clear so far?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So just to uh, where are the key principles of this thing? What does Nemade say? He talks about the idea of modernity. Now this is crucial. This is very crucial. Because we understand modernity in terms of colonial modernity, don't we? So modernity reached at different periods, at different times across India. Okay? So modernity is not seen just in terms of writing in English. So we can't say Henry Vivian Desrosiers was more modern than, let's say, Govardhan Ram Tripathi, who wrote the Saraswati Chandra. That's not how we understand modernity. Modernity is not an acceptance in a blind way. But what we are trying to understand, what we understand as modernity in Bhashas is, does it change the linguistic structures? Does it change settings? Are there changes to the forms of writing literature? All right. As I said, the novel form was introduced in a big way in the 19th century, even in the Bhashas. All right. uh, Nemade will be looking at one major Marathi novel called Yamuna Paryatan in Marathi, as to how it changed the trajectory of Marathi Sahitya. Yeah. So he is asking for an idea of native modernity. Right. So he says when he says native modernity, it cannot be homogenized. So I cannot homogenize Deshivaad across India. It's not possible because modernity worked in a different way at different places. So if you look at the literary historiography of writing in the Bhashas during the colonial period, you would find there are many bhashas which did not originate the novel at all. But there were some bhashas which actually originated the novel because of closer proximity to conditions around you. Right? Bengal could do it. Gujarat could do it in a big way. It's Bombay Presidency. That's Calcutta. Right? So it could do it very easily. So it's not even. So what you understand as modernity is not, it does not spread in an even way. Second, and he says that every place has its own modernity, right? So modernity in Bhojpuri, in Bihar, in Purvachal would be very different from the modernity that's coming out from the Pali district of Rajasthan. The same would be very, very different, say, in certain specific areas in Telangana. So modernity is never the same everywhere. That's the first thing he says. It's native to the area. All right. Second, he says is it needs to be place based. That's why I said location is very, very crucial in Deshivaad. It's not a homogeneous idea that you go back to your past and call it Deshi and you're going to call it a post-colonial intervention, intercolonialism. You're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to replace one with that. It's not a reactionary idea at all, right? He says it's a place-based identity, and it has a worldview. It's not a reactionary idea. He says you need to evolve something out of that land there. You're not replacing one with the other. What you're only doing is you're decentering your worldview. Right? So if it was the Western canon, you need to decenter your ideas of the Western canon to some extent, where you acknowledge the presence of the native canon also. That is what Nemade is trying to do. He has also been seen as anti-globalization. Now, anything that goes native would be anti-global because globalization is a homogeneous idea. The moment I say world literatures, the idea of world literatures, you're coming into the idea of globalization. Because world literatures or Welt Literatur was something that came out with Goethe during your German Enlightenment. Yes? Then the idea of Welt Literatur or world literatures, something that even Tagore brought up with Vishwa Sahib, right? Same concept as Vishwa Sahib, is something that was challenged by nationalisms across the world. So your idea of nationalism is something that's going to be very, very focused. At the same time, it's going to be very, very limiting also. It's absolutely against nationalism would be absolutely against world literatures. Yeah. Because world literatures is a homogenizing idea. It's a very old idea, 250 years old. You're looking at the basic idea of experience across the world. It was also seen during the colonial period, where you had these huge studies on mythologies, right? So Asian mythologies, European mythologies, they were all mapped. So it would be seen in that particular category. And nationalism would constantly challenge that, right? So Deshivaad is seen, unfortunately, is seen as a nationalistic response to your colonial. It never was nationalistic in that sense. As I said, it just said you need to shift your worldview and your focus. Yeah, so it's been seen as anti-globalization. It's also been seen as a critique of Western signifiers, right? I mean, it's understandable, and it's also been seen as a focus on marginal voices. Marginal in the sense unless a Bhasha writer in India is translated into English and published by Penguin, he never succeeds. So to get onto the world stage, you need English to introduce the Bhashas. which is a problem, isn't it? And which is an understandable problem in terms of practical economics. Why would a publisher? How does a publisher sell a local bhasha in Europe? Nobody would be able to read it. So you need translations, all right? You need translations. So a translation is something that brings out voices which are seen as marginal, not marginal, not in terms of success, not in terms of acceptability for the people, not in those terms. Marginal in terms of presence, right? Marginal in terms of presence. Like how many writers of Bhasha Sahitya in India would be seen among the top 50 classics in the world? That's what I mean by presence. Translation is absolutely very important for this. Yes. All right. So when it comes to literary criticism, he's going to argue that the novel is superior, short stories, and that's understandable. So when I say the novel form, the scope and the magnitude of being able to capture your local reality is much more. Short stories have a sharp impact, but they might not have it. But as I said, what I just said, he's also going to argue for Indian critical traditions. Yes, he's going to be very critical of English. All right, going to be very critical of English. Remember, basically all of us are professors of English. We're all students of English. But as I said, right from the 80s, there's been a massive influx of Western writing in English within India. And today, of course, things are changing a bit, but we need to include via translation more literature from native roots or native Sahitya or Bhasha Sahitya into the mainstream. That's being done across. So we have courses like Indian writing in English. We have any number of courses of this kind, which will bring in a heterogeneous group of writers translated into English to try and give this touch of decolonization. I'm using the term, right? A touch of decolonization, right? He rejects Western literary frameworks, yes. He's going to promote indigenous aesthetics, yes. But remember, he's not reactionary. Nemade's Deshivaad is not a reactionary idea at all. It's a shift of focus. He's going to keep the privacy or the presence of Western literature where it is. But he's urging you to understand that there are native traditions that you need to bring out in a big way. All right? Very, very important. Uh, this is something that happened. I mean, Professor Indranath Chaudhary is a very senior professor of comparative literature, passed away. Now he put nativism in a different way. He worked a lot on Tagore and China, the reception of Tagore within China and Japan. All right, he understood nativism in a different way. I just brought this in so that you get an understanding what Deshivaad actually is. He says nativism is not an obsession with the past, or Deshivaad is not an obsession with the past, but it has to be seen more as a methodology. It has to be seen as a tool of comparative study, right? Which is a good way to understand Deshivaad. Otherwise, you would see it just as a reactionary idea, right? You would just see it as a nationalist idea. You would see it you'd be limited by those terms, right? You reject a lot of what is happening, good things that are happening in the West, in privileging the native. But then you don't, it doesn't solve the purpose. You're still stuck within a binary idea, right? So you need the self and you need the other. The problem of the binary is the problem of the postcolonial, in a way. But if you need to get beyond the idea of the postcolonial, beyond the idea of the binary, then you need to stay. You need to look at them as methodologies of viewing, right? And within those methodologies of viewing, you need to understand that things cannot be seen in a reactionary way. You need to find you need to find spaces where confluence is happening, right? That's how Indranath Chaudhary and what Nemade was talking about. It needs to be seen as a method, a methodology of trying to understand how how the presence of Indian bhashas and bhasha traditions can be brought in also. All right. What does I continued that? Yes, he says what Indranath Chaudhary was further saying. It should also be not seen as an obsession with roots. Right? Nothing to do with roots. We call it a concept which would challenge the very idea of Eurocentric modernism and internationalism. Yeah, what I talked about, right? The Rushdie is internationalizing English, the chutnification of English, what he's talking about. The magic realist norms uh, that became very popular in the 80s in Latin American literature as well as in English literature, British literature. Yeah. So we are not seeing that as an obsession or a challenge. Yes. See it more as see it more as a confluence of ideas. See whether Deshivaad is compatible in situations. Right. So where let us say the Western model is not compatible, the Deshivaad model can be used, and vice versa. It would be a huge waste of time and effort if we're going to uh, pitch it and keep them as the other all the time. Yeah, the self and the other all the time. The moment you bring in a confluence of ideas, things move. There's a synthesis that's happening. Without synthesis, it's going to remain reactionary. And being reactionary will never help uh, any bhasha, to be honest. It will not help English also as a literature. So, do I need to cover more, or have I has it served its purpose? Should I open it up for discussion now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can open it for discussions because we have covered already a lot of things, and the new linguistic survey of India is also happening. It's one of the projects of Government of India,
Yes.
and so our students have also discussed a lot about it. And one of the beauty of this class is that it is really multilingual in the international sense.
Yes.
So we have opened up a lot of ideas. I think we can now start discussions. Yes, for discussions, because one way lecture and that too online can become
Very boring.
boring, and also we don't know if our ideas are getting across.
Yeah.
So because in classroom there are interactions.
An interactive class is the best class, actually.
Yes. So now here I would request for the interactions, observations, questions from.
Actually, what I would be interested in is, do we have students from Bangladesh, Myanmar, Maldives
Yes.
in the class? In the class right now?
Yes, they are here. Not Maldives.
Uh,
Yasmina, can you please mute yourself? Yeah, yes. No, not
Anybody?
from Maldives, but Bangladesh, Myanmar, Indonesia, Argentina.
Hmm.
Yes, these are Bhutan. We have, yes, these are the countries being represented.
Anybody from
Serbia.
Bangladesh? Anybody from Bangladesh here?
Yes, there are people from Bangladesh.
Oh, okay.
Many people from Bangladesh, yes. West Bengal also, if we talk only of the language, but
No,
Bangladesh.
no, it was very
Bangladesh,
interesting. No, it was very interesting. Mr. Saad, because I used to go to Dhaka quite frequently during a period of time, and my Bangla is a very functional Bangla, right? It's a very functional Bangla, and the Bangla is a very chaste Bangla in Bangladesh, right? It is very very difficult for me to communicate at times because you don't want to upset the linguistic sensibility of the people with your very very bad Bangla, right? But they would recognize that I'm from India very very directly. Yes, they were very happy to see me, to be honest. And interestingly, I had this encounter with the vice chancellor of Dhaka University there, and like good diplomacy, good neighbors, let us say, I spoke in, greeted him in English, and he replied back to me in chaste Bangla, not English. All right, it's that literary sensibility. This is what Nemade was talking about. You need to be rooted within your traditions. That really struck me. Wonderful. Yeah.
Yes. So now open to discussions. We have students from Bangladesh also. And the same situations we are facing everywhere. In
Yes.
fact, many times our Bhutan students have started working on these things.
Oh,
We have
good.
a student who is working on Bhojpuri novel also.
Oh, great.
So they all can bring in various aspects, but I hope they come out of their shell. Yes, Srishti, you are working on Bhojpuri. Then add, then Shailja, then we have many people. Rehana Jannat, you are facing the problems in the same situation of, and in the context of teaching of English in Bangladesh. So we have many people.
Oh, very good, sir.
Numi Lingi is a student who comes from Arunachal. And
Oh, okay.
Arunachal itself is a very good linguistic laboratory.
Yeah, yeah.
So they all can bring in various perspectives. Yes. Now, some
It's
comments, some you can share your experiences also, your observations in the context of what we have discussed.
Can I ask you something?
of course
Sure, sure.
Jasmine. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for this lecture. I enjoyed. I was in the contact with Native Americans and learned much about their troubles to save their culture. So I really appreciate this. And since I'm from the small country with the Slavic language, specific Slavic language, Serbian, we also feel that influence from the West that we cannot resist. But my question right now is not about languages per se, but I mean, in terms of languages as a communication tool, but about the cultural background. So I found myself in my personal experience to be inspired by other cultures, try as much as I can to come into their shoes and taking their background to try to speak like they speak, although I'm not from that culture. And as much as I can, of course, do that to say some general message, which is universal always. So, what do you think about that attempts? When you, for example, you come from Europe or from Russia or from South America, doesn't matter, and you try, for example, to come into the shoes of one to get that flavor of for example, some local community in India and try to use their worldview in order to say some kind of general messages. Or what do you think about that kind of intertextual, let's say, or I don't know how to explain that, uh,
That, that,
connection?
yeah, that's a great idea and a great problem that also that you're bringing out. I mentioned the problems of globalization, isn't it? Because and the idea of nationalism, right? So the moment you're rooting back towards your own culture, it will be seen within this larger lens of nationalism. This is where it's limiting also, but it's generally seen as a reactionary idea. Now, it's extremely difficult to counter the idea of globalization, actually, because globalization would bring you into this homogenized space where, let us say, it would be very, very difficult to articulate your originary self in a way. Yeah. Now, this is also bringing in a lot of anxiety among people and among nation states. The moment, let us say, you have this uniform consumerist mercantile culture that's coming in, which is a part of your global forces, global trade. It's at the same time it's eroding a lot of your local, right? It's not just India, it's not just Bangladesh. It could be Serbia also, it could be Croatia also, whichever states you want to look at. It's always the local which is going to face it. Now, when that happens, you have the rise of forms of nationalism, right? You have forms of nationalism to counter uh, this idea of globalization. It's always a violent encounter. It's never a happy encounter. Let me tell you, it's very, very difficult to stop the forces from happening, right? But what you can do is what has been done in a big way is a lot of your communicative tools that have happened within this global force is you can modify it to your local language. Yes, but that can be used in a straightforward way, in a straightforward sense, to deal with mundane realities of life. But the moment you say nativism, you need to get even beyond this frame. It's You need to get beyond the idea of the reactionary. Because when I say nativism, you need to understand, as I said, to decenter the very notion of the self and the other. All right? Your local has to coexist with what's happening in front of you. Yes? It's a schizophrenic condition, let me tell you. It's a schizophrenic condition because one is never ever clear as to where the borders are blurring, to be honest. Did I
Yeah,
answer?
you're right.
Yeah?
Yeah. Thank you.
Most welcome. Anybody else? Shall we call it a day, Professor?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, tell me.
Namaste, sir. This is Aman from Bihar.
Yeah, tell me.
Sir, I have a question regarding the regional language that in this modern day, sir, people are writing novel. When we talk about the modern writer from Bihar, there is one very famous writer who wrote Dark Horse, and maybe you know. Uh, so they use the local language element.
Uh,
Uh, but they are not using it very prominently.
yes, see, this is an old phenomenon. I mean, as I told you, it happened with uh, with a number of writers, with Rushdie and post-Rushdie. They started using a lot of Indian elements. And let me tell you, I don't have a quarrel with Rushdie, to be honest, right? It, it, it's
Yes.
it's it's quite difficult to write like him and what he's doing. It's not a simple job. I mean, you might have a conceptual problem with it. That's a different thing. Uh, a number of writers did that. Number of writers did that when they would try to incorporate local Pasha elements into their main texts. Largely seen in translations, right? Largely seen in translations. So when you're translating languages across, you will find that the translator is keeping certain elements, certain statements within the original language itself. They're not even translating that, right? They call it cultural intelligibility. They would call it culture bound terms. You don't want to do it because I mean you would just ruin the the effect of the local bhasha there. Now, now as I said, it's a global market forces, right? So when they are operating, you need to have you need, even if you're writing within the bhashas, you need to cater to the market, right? Gone are the days we're not talking about writers sitting in ivory towers, right? It's not easy to be a full-time writer. You need to make money on it at the same time. You need to look at the publishing market and see if you can do it. So most of the writers would be looking at publishers also would be looking at certain forms of writing, certain new interventions of writing to bring it in, right? Uh, at times it works, at times it doesn't, right? But let us say there would still be a few writers who would be true to their roots of place. Let's say there would still be somebody. Many would be writing for a publishing market and good writing also. I mean, no problems with that. It's the way you look at the market. You are studying me.
Yes, sir. So, is the market is vanishing our culture or regional language literature?
So I don't see the tension at all here. As I said, the the anxiety was seen more with the English departments and less with the language departments. People people in Hindi who are teaching Bhojpuri Sahitya might not share the same anxiety you and I are having. Let's be honest. It's very specific to the English departments and specifically with this post-colonial anxiety that's happening that we need to be, we need to decolonize. I don't think the language departments in India have a problem at all. Have a problem at all. It's not even a threat. Let's be honest. It's not even a threat. Bhojpuri writing will continue. Bhojpuri writing, there will be an audience for Bhojpuri. It will be local. All right. The, the,
Yes,
the,
sir.
pro- the, the problems begin when you're trying to translocate Bhojpuri into some other language or into some other cultural sphere. That's where the problems lie. Yeah. I don't think Bhojpuri has a problem at all. No,
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
most of them.
Some
So,
more comments from Bangladesh and others, because there are very, very interesting ideas. In fact, so one of the things that I was thinking when you were talking that presently our professionals in translation in certain the AI tools. Yesterday, somebody was talking about AI tools. Now, some of them I have heard telling that in India there are 14,000 languages. So that's the language of the computer specialists. You see the variety that we have. So
yeah,
how it works and how every language operates. And then there is another issue of identity, which we have not discussed much, but that is also an issue that comes with the language in modern times, specifically. You find even in school days several issues related to identity and English and other foreign languages. You can see there are several debates which are very interesting. For example, in India, most of the universities will teach Hindi. In English and foreign languages university, should we have Hindi or not? And they debated it for some time. There was a debate. So we can open up to more discussions, others, your experiences. Otherwise, we can keep talking. We are programmed to talk.
Um,
Yes, Shivadi.
I was just thinking about it. So, sir, I come from Bastar,
okay,
uh, and in my lived experience from my childhood onwards, I have spoken Odia in my home. My mother tongue is Odia.
yeah,
All of my neighbors were Telugu.
okay,
All of my friends were Hindi.
Wonderful.
Whenever I went outside my town, they used to speak Bhatri.
Okay.
Little bit, so towards left, the right side of the town, they spoke Halbi.
Okay.
And whenever some kind of festival or something happened, and then I had many tribal friends as well, so they
Yes.
spoke Gondi.
Mm.
But our common language was Hindi, of course, but all of their Hindi, like everyone spoke different Hindi.
Yes.
And again, there were many people who used to speak Chhattisgarhi.
Mm.
And in last 10 years, there are many people from Bihar and UP who have settled there.
Yes.
And after that, I think relocation after this independence war of Bangladesh, there were many relocation and many Bengali people also came there. So there are many Bengali people as well.
Yeah.
So there is always this fight of what is regional there, what is native, and
Oh,
it's a very complex situation where even I personally know Hindi. I can speak Hindi. I can speak Odia, read and write English, obviously, and I can understand, speak Telugu.
mm.
Halbi, Bhatri, Gondi I cannot understand. Halbi and Bhatri I can understand. Halbi
Mm.
I can speak a little bit. But there is this idea of nativism where I don't feel very native in either Odia or Telugu or English, obviously, and not even in Hindi. I feel connected to somehow this Bhatri Halbi Gondi, which I perhaps don't know but have certain affinity to it because that's my lived experience. So
Yes.
how do we now conceptualize this Deshivaad or kind of nativism here? Because it becomes very complex.
Yeah. 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 Great. 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 So interestingly, the languages that you outline, right? There's Bangla, there's Korea, Hindi. These are languages with old, long historiographies. That means they have a script. They have a settled 1,000 years, 700 odd years of sustained literary production. You have a canon. So I can have a canon for Telugu. I can have a canon for Hindi. Yes, I can have a canon for Bangla. Right? Sustained literary production over a period of time is present in these languages. Very elitist, right? Very elitist. What when I say elitist, not in a negative sense, but in this Margi and the Deshi concept. The Margi Bhashas, elitist in terms of its literary linguistic development. Right? While the other languages you spoke, Gondi, these are spoken bhashas. These are bhashas without a script. They come into that sphere of orality. That's where and the oral sphere, and that's going to be a major argument if you read that I'd send that text of Nemade to all of you. Uh, there's an entire chapter on morality in that discussion, where he talks about morality as something that is can be termed as the most authentic experience of all. What cannot be written can be best expressed. That would be the whole. He's of course Nemade will be looking at the Vedic and he'll come down from the Vedic. He'll be looking at the oral tradition. He'll be looking at preservation. He'll be looking at morality as a way of community gathering, the construction of the community, the identity of the community, and so on and so forth. He'll be looking at all that. But as I said, when you don't have a script, the oral is the most authentic way of going ahead. The moment you have a script, let us say, you go artificial. In a sense, artificial in the sense you have you start building literary histories, you start building mainstream idea of mainstream ideas, and morality is connected with the land itself. That's why you will be more comfortable. When I say Deshivaad, it will be more comfortable with the oral languages and less with the languages of the script. Are you understanding?
Yes, sir, yes, sir, certainly. Mhm. So can we like would there be would it be a good kind of initiative to provide, and can we really provide script to a language and make a canon out of it? Because there is also the lack of history in terms of like in Bastar, the history really starts like there are archaeological evidences, but history really kicks off when British enter
Yeah.
Bastar in that sense. So can we really have, even if we have texts, we don't really have the philological aspect of it. So we don't know where it starts, where it ends. So how can we? Because my father, my grandfather, they knew many Bhatri Halbi songs, folk songs. But
Mm,
now I cannot really historically place them, in
mm.
this spatio-temporal kind of line. I cannot place them. So even if we do have a script, how do we write a history of it?
Ah, see, what you need to do is to make ethnographic surveys in your area, and it has to be hardcore ethnography. You need to start locating those songs. You need to transcribe them. You need to write them in any available script. Right? You need to record them. You need to talk to the performers for those songs. You need to talk to the practitioners of that language. You need to make a lexicon for what could be termed as a collection of everyday words in the beginning, right? And this would branch out into various forms. No? There would be botanical names, there would be geological names, there would be names for rivers, there would be names for everyday life. That's how. So you need to make an ethnographic lexicon. And it's not possible by one man. I mean, one man can do it if he dedicates his time and space for it. But you need to bring in a number of people for this. It's like the People's Linguistic Survey of India. It is absolutely voluntary. Number of people joined in across India to build it. Grierson survey. All the school teachers who are employed work on this. So you need to bring in people to get together. Then you once you have your basic database, right?
Yes, sir.
Recordings, transcribing, building your basic lexicon, and so on and so forth. You need to bring in anthropologists who would start looking at the lexicon. They would be, and they would try and trace the nearest bhasha to which it can be attached to. It's not like Gondi can be equated with Hindi or Gujarati. No, not that way.
Yeah.
It can never be arbitrary. uh, in a linguistic sense, in a phonological sense, in terms of in a morphological idea, we need to find its nearest root language, whichever it can be. Are you getting me?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes,
That's how you
certainly.
do it. That's how you do it.
Okay.
It's a long
That's-
process.
yeah.
It's a long process. Yeah.
What I really want to do it. I mean, it will. So, yeah. Thank you, sir.
I mean, you could always apply for a project on this kind if you want to work on
Yes, sir. Certainly.
it.
Thank you, sir.
Well,
Hello, sir. This is Aman again. Sir, I want to ask one question that I come from India in a region called Magad, where this university is presently. So, Magad is surrounded by Bhojpur region. Bhojpur region has a script. Bhojpur region, Mithila region has a Mathili script. And my one sorrow or grief can be told that, sir, Magadhi has no any script.
ah,
So, what when we see long period, Magad has a long history. Why this region can't establish a script or any written form of?
no, people haven't tried. See, as I just was talking to Shivangi as to the process, how a script is constructed, or how to
Yes, sir.
bring in a Bhasha, you need to do the same thing in Magadhi. It's only then it's possible. You need to show, because see, when I say language, uh, you need us. There are certain parameters as to how languages are recognized across the world. Every country will have a minimum number of speakers that you need for it to be qualified as a language, a spoken language. So you need a database. So unless you create a database of the number of speakers, the kind of literature that's happening, the kind of morality that's happening, you cannot even think of a script. So first of all, you need to construct your database of the local version. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, I don't specifically have a question because you have already answered my question, which Shivadi and Aman was trying to ask.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, I just want to ask that. Okay, I'll share some background. I come from Kanpur, Uttar Pradesh. However, I have spent my first 10 years of life in different parts of India, like Arunachal Pradesh and central India, and then I have lived for a long time in Kanpur itself. So, in that way, what I was wondering is that the amount of time that we spend uh, with the language or the way we engage with it, it kind of gets inbuilt in us, or also this loss of sense of a language. Like, I mean, I knew Bangla, Arunachal, Northeast languages, Assamese, but now I hardly remember them. And um, so, and also, I want to work in this area of nativism, exploring the women writings,
Okay.
how specific cultures or even specific regions they have different norms, cultural norms, how we see beauty, how we learn about what is beautiful and what is not. So, I was thinking about working on this area.
Good.
So my question is that what should somebody like what should be the trajectory one should follow if one has a limited understanding of say language and linguistics. So in that way, I would like to study this regional or cultural specificity of taking this feminist lens. So could you just uh,
Well,
guide
first of
me?
all, if you could just see, it's very, very difficult to handle ethnographic work if we are not aware of the local language. First of all, so first you need to find I mean, you're quite fluent in number of languages, so you need to find a language you like to work in, which is closest to you, right? Which you're aware of, and
Hmm.
then you get it. Then you need to develop uh, because it's going to be ethnographic work. So you need to look at sociological theory in proper detail. You know, the methods, ethnographic methods that work within sociology and sociological research, right? It's not as if you just make a questionnaire and you move on. There are very, very definite ways and modes by which you identify a sample, you quantify a sample. There's a lot of statistical software which would analyze your results, right? It's a very, very professional way when ethnographers work. Yeah, it's not something like what English departments do. That's not how ethnography functions. Let me tell you, we can be pretty casual when we start looking at things around us, right? Uh, so you need to get into the discipline proper to understand it. So what I would advise you is read up your sociology properly first, and your sociological theory as well as ethnographic modes of research properly. I don't know if you have sociology as a big department in your university, but you can always access the Swayam portal With the government of India, there's something called a Swayam portal where you can access any of those MOOC courses in sociology to learn about sociological methods. And the same would go for Shivandi as well as Aman. Train yourself within ethnography and sociology first, right? It's not enough just to be a literature student if you're going to do the kind of work that you want to do. You need to be trained within sociology, the methods properly. It's going to be very positivist, remember, right? So you'll have to understand how to analyze positivist results, how you analyze variables, and that you can't do without training.
Yes, sir.
Are you getting me? So you're advised to take up a course on ethnographic methods on the Swayam portal. I'm sure you'll find it, and take those courses or methods properly. I mean, you can use your English background, you can use your languages background, no problems. But you can't confuse methods. All right, methodology is crucial when you're working on all this. So if you are able to acquire the ethnographic methods through various courses and you're certified for it, it will be easier for you to work out a proper structure within which you can handle your research ahead. All right, a bit of training.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Any more discussions? There are many local issues that all of you try to handle. And one of the problems of this methodology is, as such said, is that the moment you write it down, the orality is gone. So this is a very
Problematic one.
situation.
Yeah, yeah.
The oral literature has its own dynamics,
Yeah.
and the moment you write it down, that dynamics is gone. It's like you write a same sentence, like Shakespearean pun. You write the sentence, and that pun is gone. So that part also we have to keep in mind. Many times, if you remember some old songs, as Shivadi said, and today you write it down, then the dynamics has become different. And in the situations in which we ask, and linguists more and more ask this question also, ethnographic models in linguistics also ask this, that what is the notion of mother tongue? Like Shivadi explained the situation. So what is his mother tongue? See, Odia can be a political choice, but not necessarily mother tongue in linguistic terms. So we have many questions in these situations. And many times, several political ideas also get into play. So, any other comments, questions? You want to share your experiences in different fields? Because see, Yasmina Sefer, who interacted first, who asked the first question, she said that she's from a Slavic language background. And Slavic languages itself have faced it. The issue of translation has been there in Slavic languages. And identification of the Slavic language with the nearest language, this issue has been there also. And in India also that issue is there, because you can try to attach the languages, but in the contemporary times, many times it doesn't work, because the computer may not find the same attachment. But for the computer, the phonological difference remain a valid phonological difference. With the human ears, the attachment is possible. But even Hindi is spoken in Haryana and Hindi is spoken in Bihar may not be the same language for AI. We are facing these problems and these issues and identity. Which language is being taught in schools? That also helps us define the identity. There are many identity locators there. And nowadays, you find many foreign languages being taught in schools, and that is also an identity marker. It's a new identity marker which has come in about last 1 or 2 decades in India. That your child goes to a school where this or these many foreign languages are being taught. there are researches on this also. So, anything else? Any other questions? Sharing of experiences? Fra, you don't want to share your experience of Thailand, which is a very beautiful experience. You can talk about Thailand and the languages in Thailand and their identity.
Actually, good morning, sir. That I'm Pratakapan from Thailand.
Yeah.
Actually, the idea of nativism in Thailand also is very intense. It's in that sense, especially in my region, because uh, my mother tongue is Laos language. Uh, I used to use Laos language in daily life, but in the school we use Thai language only. That is very good experience to share about. But unfortunately, that the language of our nation is Thai, but most of the influence language in my regions mostly is Laos language. But now we are not, we don't call it Laos language because also I don't know, it's maybe because of this idea of nativism also. We are claim that it's not Laos language. We
Mm.
claim that is because we are in my region we call Isan region. That's we claim that language as an Isan language. It's not Laos language. But in fact, that is Laos language because Isan language there is no, like the pattern of the language. We don't have the letters, we don't have the word, we don't have the system of the language. But Laos language, they have a system of language. They have the pattern. They have a letters. They have a word. They have a the structure of language. But our regions claim that is not Laos language. So it's very interesting. But the idea is we are not actually most of the influence because of before Laos depart from before we are separate Laos and Thailand as a country. Our region also is influenced is because at that time it's very big regions that we are influenced by. It's like very how to say like it's corporate languages, culture, tradition, belief, religions also. And nowadays, that is the problem. Even though in Southeastern also, some region of Southeastern they speak Cambodia, they speak Cambodian languages also like Khmer language. In I'm not of Isan, we are speak Laos language in as our mother tongues. But we are not say that is Lao language. You can go to Thai if you go to Thailand, you will see in Isan region, you will see that this idea very still remains and very profound, very influenced. We are not say this Lao language at all. We claim that it's as a Isan language.
Oh,
That's
that's
it I want to
interesting.
share.
It's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of commonality, Professor Mishra, across South Asia. Yes, commonalities of experiences that we are having. Very interesting. Very interesting.
And also, and another thing is, Laos language is, I think it's just only one language that is very expressive language in the world, in the sense of expressions. Very, how to say, it's very expressive language because it's make the Laos language. If you close to Laos language, you will see how the language is very expressions
Mm.
in terms of the meaning. Very it will give you the image
Correct.
along with the meaning of the words also. It's make you imagine along with the meaning of words also.
That's interesting. That's an interesting
Yes,
idea. The
like
image
like
originating with the phoneme. Very good. All right.
yes,
Okay.
like for example, if you see the yellow,
Mm.
yellow is everybody know yellow, and Thai language we will see the yellow is lương, we call lương, but in Laos language is there's something add more. express the meaning more. Like Luang, in Laos language, yellow also is called Luang, but it will have something like something very, very expressive like Luang, it means like you even imagine it means it's very, very yellow, like it's
Okay.
very intense
So, so your,
meaning.
your the suffixes and prefixes play a big role
Yes, yes.
with the Bhasha. Great. And that was
Very
very
interesting
interesting.
language.
That's extremely interesting. Especially the idea that that an image is also conveyed. I thought that was very, very interesting. I think you should write on
Thank,
this a bit. You should write on this a bit.
thank you, sir.
If you can. Yeah.
Yes, this is a age-old linguistic problem that in bordering regions, the language is considered to be a dialect of which dominant language. Like
Okay,
whether he is a dialect of which dominant language. In India, we face this problem. Many,
yes,
almost everywhere in the world. So this is a very interesting experience, and Lao and how the political domination, the issue of identity, and the loss of the script, and then independent evolution of the language that takes place. Like, sir, you gave the example of Bangla as being spoken in Bangladesh, as you experience in Bangla as being spoken in our West Bengal, and their trajectory of evolution in last 5 7 decades. That becomes a very important part. Historically, also there will be dialectal variations, but the trajectory of last 4 5 decades is also very interesting.
Yes.
So that is there. So anybody else, Bhutanese friends? The Bhutan Brigade is not talking. They have an issue of Zongkha and which is their Desi language, Zongkha or the New English, and there are some
like,
Nepali speakers also.
excuse me, sir, can I add one more thing?
Sure, sure, sure.
Um, Nowadays, in Thailand, there's new languages, new language. That is not official language, but there is this language is specifically used in third sexuality groups, third gender, third
Okay.
sexuality that they use. They call this language is flower language. It's very interesting language, but there's no official. But the system that they use and they experience is not totally different. But if you are not close to them, if you are not familiar with this language, you will totally confuse your mind. But I used to spend time with these people because in Thailand we are open for any kind of gender that, but they have this language, it's very interesting language that we call flower language. They use in the third gender group. But I think that is very interesting to explore more about this language in Thailand also.
So that's interesting because we have a language that's spoken by the third gender even in India, but
Yes,
that language is not. It's a secretive language, so it's an endogamous language in that sense. It's not that
it,
everybody is allowed entry into that, but it's good to hear that this language is more open in Thailand.
yes.
Extremely good.
It's very interesting,
Yeah,
but because
yeah,
of, for example, if you are a man or you are a woman, if
yeah,
you heard that language, you will not understand at all. What
yeah.
are they talking?
Mm.
What are they communication to each other? But there's really understand deeply also, in detail also. But
Yes.
the moment of language that they are using is the they just change the spelling of words
Ah,
and they create a new letters also, which is that you can apply to every language in the world. This means everybody can speak this language.
that's nice.
If you
That's
are
interesting.
study in the detail, if you are talk, if you are accustomed with them, if you use this language as a daily life, some of my master also like they are very expert in this language also. They speak like very fluently in this language, but this language is not official language, but it's very interesting language. How the third gender group they are talking, how they are use the new language as a tool to communicate, to connect between each other and uh, how to say exchange their idea about their career, their job, their expertise, their intelligence or their ability about everything that they can share through this language. We call flower language.
Great. Wonderful. Thanks a million for that. That's something I should explore ahead. Thanks a lot.
Yes, though theoretically such languages exist other places also, but this is an interesting information that we get from such languages. Like you go to to any tourist place like Varanasi, and you will find that the boatmen have their own language
Mm,
with which they communicate to each other, and they will understand each other, which people from the same region living on the same ghats will not understand because their
yes.
language. And this is not a question of the technical uses of of the field of domain of boating, but the language in which they communicate, and they tend to create a register of their field. Some business communities also have this. So when you have to create a hidden communication for whatever reasons, then this happens. So this is an interesting case. And flower language is the use is also very interesting because flower language has been there. This also known. There has been an elaborate code of conduct related to flowers. I think in Japan also they have some Hana Kotoba or some word is there for flower language. This is there in European Christianity also. So the word is also very interesting. Yes. Anybody else?
Yes, sir. I also want to add something.
Yes, Binam.
Yes, yes, sir. So I come from Tripura, and here the Bengali that we speak it's different from that what we used to see in West Bengal. So like it's a kind of mixture of it has influence of Bangladesh more. The Bengali that is spoken in Tripura or in the northeastern part of our country. And like the issue of nativity is also there because my state was earlier it was dominated by the indigenous people like the Tripur people who majoritarily speak the Tibetan language Konkoro, and they are using the Bengali script, but now they are trying to adopt the Roman script for which they are protesting. And so there is a issue like and like so there is a difference between the groups and the question of like the indigenous people here are like they they are seeing that there is the imposition of the Bengali language on them because they can understand Bengali, they can speak Bengali, but we cannot understand their language or nor we are taught their language in the schools or the educational level. So this is creating a means it's creating a disturbance among the peace and also to the society here in Tripura.
That's
So what
interesting.
can the
Yes.
what can so I'm trying to just say that what can the government or other institutions can do to like to bring the unity so that the language does not become a method of like separating the people.
If governments were that sensitive, it would be a paradise, no?
Yes,
The problem is, politics does not function as a visual thinking. Uh, the, what's very important is the local intelligentsia. They need to come forward. They need to represent to their local science academies. I mean, it's a huge, long bureaucratic movement before languages develop, saved, or protected. It's a long process, but somebody has to make a start. That's important. Yes,
yes,
you make a start, and then people take it through. But you need to sustain it for some time until people come. Yeah, because it's a priority for you. Yes, it might not be a priority for a lot of other people around you living in that particular place. But as it is sustained for some time as a movement, people join. That's how it happens. It takes time, all right? Any form of activism will take time. Remember. Yes.
So that's an interesting example, again from the northeast. And from that region, when you go, as Ra was also talking, you have the languages across the Mekong River, same as you find as languages across the Ganga River in India. And Mekong is sometimes related to Ma Ganga also. That's why I'm using this. Languages, as we say cultures, but languages across the Mekong River. That is an important issue. And we need to gradually, someday, we will have data and we will have some cultural as well as linguistic, ethnographic study on all these aspects. So we need to take it up gradually. Someday, some of you will take it up. But
Yeah.
languages and cultures and ethnography across the Mekong River. When we say entire Southeast Asia, yes, but you see the languages, how they have grown, how they have changed, how they are connected, how the people in the vicinity of two different languages, they communicate with each other, and they have different linguistic features also sometimes. For example, Thai has a different feature regarding the time use in the language. Time doesn't mean, I don't mean by the time structure grammatically, but for example, pi and pi, these two will be different in Thai. So you have many such features and how people cope up with that. Like in Nepal, you have many languages which are tonal languages, and the others are not tonal languages, and how they have grown up. Because there is one theory also that the Chinese, which is a tonal language, the tones were in prehistory of Chinese language, were actually the, the conjugations, the declensions that we have in many classical languages like Latin, Greek, Sanskrit, etc. So such theories will also come up in play. So this will be an interesting study in future. All of you can take up regarding your own culture, your own ethnographic situations. So anybody else? Anything else you would like to add? There are others who can bring. Jauza, you can talk about your languages and the how the notion of native or Deshivaad, as we said, plays in your region. And there is an interesting word, Binamra used nativity. Now nativity is used even for Christmas. Yes. So you see there is a regional variation in that also. So, well, I think there are no more comments and questions. So we are grateful, sir. Thank you for opening up these contemporary Indian literary theories and the whole background for these theories, in which not only India, uh, they might have come with some Indian thinkers. We have discussed is the foundational idea in the entire Southeast Asia, because that's how most of the Southeast Asian countries are connected. So we are grateful. I think Shivadi, you want to say something?
Yes, sir. If we could have your email or some means of contact, it
Uh,
would be.
uh, I don't know. Can I add it here somewhere?
Yeah, in the chat box, or
Where is this? The chat box. One please.
in call message. It will be
Yeah,
there.
yeah, 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 yeah. Got it, got it. Yeah, I just sent it. Yeah,
Yes, sir. Thank you.
most welcome. Sir, it
So
was a great pleasure. It was a great pleasure.
thank you, sir.
Anytime.
Thank you, sir.
Lot of fun it was. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah,
sir. We
yeah.
are grateful, sir.
Welcome, sir. Anytime. Yes, sir. And
Yes.
wish you all the best ahead. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
And
Thank
have
you,
a
sir.
great, yeah, and have a great day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Thank you,
yeah,
sir.
yeah. Bye. Bye. Bye.